Hi everyone! In this video, we're going to focus on how we can go about solving polynomial equations. So we've already talked about in a previous video how we can identify if an equation is a polynomial equation. And so now we're going to talk about the steps that we can go about of what do we do with that? How do we find the value of x? And so we're going to use the same example. So we have the polynomial equation 3x cubed plus 2x squared equals 12x plus 8. One important thing is that when we have a polynomial equation, it's going to be very helpful if we rewrite it in standard form. And that's actually going to be our very first step when we're solving these equations. So what that means is that if you look at step 1 down here, we're going to move all the terms to one side of our equal sign and then get 0 on the other side. Another thing is that when we write it so that all the terms are on the one side of our equal sign, it's also nice if we go about writing those terms in descending order of the powers of the variable. And so we'll show you what I mean by that in step 1. The second step that you're going to go with is you're going to factor that polynomial. So now that you have 0 on one side of your equal sign, we're going to factor using some of those factoring strategies that we had talked about in a previous video. The third step is you're going to set each factor equal to 0 and solve for x in those resulting equations. And then the very last step is you're going to check all the solutions using your original polynomial equation. So let's go ahead and use these 4 steps to solve that given equation at the top. So I'm going to rewrite it in this box. So we have 3x cubed plus 2x squared equals 12x plus 8. All right, so the very first thing, it tells me to move everything to one side of our equal sign. So in this case, I think it's going to be easiest because I don't want a negative as my leading term. So I'm going to move the 12x plus 8 over to the left-hand side. So to do so, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 12x from both sides. And so then we get 3x cubed plus 2x squared minus 12x equals positive 8. And then I need to move the 8 to the other side also. So I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. And when we do, we get 3x cubed plus 2x squared minus 12x minus 8 equals 0. So now I've successfully done step 1. Everything is on the left-hand side, and then on the right-hand side, I have 0. So now we're going to look at step 2, which is factoring. So remember, let me rewrite this polynomial really quickly. Remember when we're factoring, we looked at that flow chart, and there were several different strategies we could try based on how many terms our polynomial had. And so in this case, I can tell right away because the very first thing we had done when we factored was take out the greatest common factor. But in this case, our coefficients 3, 2, negative 12, negative 8, they have no common factor. And then if we looked at our x's, not all of our terms have an x, so we can't even pull out one of those either. So now we look at how many terms we have. Well, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 things being added and subtracted together. So we have a 4-term polynomial. And our one strategy we had for that was factoring by grouping. So let's go ahead and do that. So to factor by grouping, remember we put parentheses around our terms. Let me just rewrite this actually. So we're going to put parentheses around our first 2 terms. And then same for our last 2 terms. And it's still equal to 0. So when I factor, remember that by grouping, we're going to pull out the greatest common factor for both sets of parentheses. So looking at my first set, I have 3x cubed plus 2x squared. 3 and 2 have no common factors, but the terms themselves both have an x, and I can pull out an x squared because that is the lowest exponent I have there. So I can pull out x squared. Remember, x squared times what gets us 3x cubed? Well, that's going to be a 3x. X squared times what gets us 2x squared? That's just going to be a positive 2. And then for our second set of parentheses, same process. What's our greatest common factor of both terms? And in this case, only one term has an x, so we can't pull out any x's. But negative 12 and negative 8 are both divisible by negative 4. And so negative 4 times what gets us negative 12x? Well, that's going to be a 3x. And then negative 4 times what gets us negative 8? That's going to be a positive 2. Again, an important thing to notice when we're factoring by grouping, remember that what's in these parentheses has to be the same. If they aren't, then we can't factor it by grouping. So in this case, our factors are going to be our greatest common factors. So x squared minus 4. And then what we had in our parentheses, that was the same. So 3x plus 2 equals 0 still. So now we have successfully factored our polynomial. Again, if you're unsure if you factored correctly, you can always use the distribution property to multiply these two factors and see if you get your original 4-term polynomial back. All right, so now we're going to move on to step 3. So we're going to set each factor equal to 0 and then solve those equations. So I'm going to have the factor x squared minus 4 equals 0. And then we're also going to have the factor 3x plus 2 equals 0. So I'm first going to solve this equation on the left-hand side. So first thing I want to do is get my x's all by themselves. So I have to get rid of this negative 4. So to do so, I add 4 to both sides. So then we get 0 with our x squared. And then on the right-hand side, we have 0 plus 4 is 4. I then am going to square root both sides so that I can get rid of this square on my x. So then on the left, we're left with x. Remember that when I take a square root to solve for a variable, I am going to end up getting two solutions, the positive and the negative of the square root of 4, which is 2. So that means if I want to write this out fully, we have x equals negative 2 and x equals positive 2. This equation on the right-hand side, so 3x plus 2 equals 0. Same process. We want to get x's by themselves, so we're going to subtract 2 from both sides first. We get 3x equals negative 2. I want to get rid of this times 3 with my x, so I'm going to divide by 3 on both sides, and we get x equals negative 2/3. My very last step, step 4, we're going to check all the solutions in the original equation. And we got 3. Remember, we got negative 2, positive 2, and negative 2/3. So let's go ahead and check first when x equals 2. And again, I'm going to plug this into our original equation. So we had 3x cubed plus 2x squared equals 12x plus 8. So now everywhere I see an x, I'm going to plug in 2. And then I'm going to use order of operations. I'm going to solve on both sides separately. I'm just going to draw a line down the middle because remember, we're checking that this is equal. If it's not, then we know that this can't be a solution. X equals 2 cannot be a solution to our original equation. So I'm going to work with the left-hand side first and then the right-hand side, and then we'll compare. So first thing, I'm going to do the exponents. So 2 cubed is 8. And 2 squared is 4. Then I'm going to do my multiplication. Again, we're using order of operations. So multiplication comes before addition. 2 times 8 is 16, and 2 times 4 is 8. And then we have 16 plus 8. Oh no, sorry. I wrote something wrong. This should be a 3. Be careful when you're copying down your equation. Make sure you're careful about it. 3 times 8 is what we should have here. I accidentally wrote a 2. 3 times 8, we get 24. 24 plus 8, we get 32. All right, now let's look at what we have on the right-hand side of our equal sign. 12 times 2, we get 24. Plus an 8, which is 32. We get the same thing on both sides, so this is a solution. Now we'll try this with x equals -2. Very similar process, so write our original polynomial equation. So before we even moved terms to the one side, everywhere I see an x, I'm now going to plug in a -2. Again, we don't know if these are equal. We're trying to show that they are, so I'm only going to work with one side at a time and then compare what we get. So again, you're going to do exponents first. So a -2 cubed, -2 times -2 is +4, times a -2, this time we get a -8. And then -2 times -2, we get a +4. 3 times -8, that's going to be a -24, plus 2 times 4, which is going to be 8. -24 plus 8, we're going to get -16. On the right-hand side, we get 12 times -2 is -24, plus 8. A -24 plus 8, we end up getting -16. So again, these are also equal. So x minus 2 is also a solution. One last one to check. I know this is very tedious, but it's just to make sure that we do have the correct solutions. So again, you're going to copy down original polynomial equation. Everywhere I see an x, I'm now going to put in a -2/3. So +3 times -2/3 cubed plus 2 times -2/3 squared equals, maybe, again, this is what we're checking, 12 times -2/3 plus 8. So again, I don't know that these are equal, so I'm going to separate and do one side at a time, then compare our answers. So -2/3 cubed, we cube the numerator and the denominator. So 2 cubed is 8, 3 cubed is 27, and it's negative because it's a negative cubed. Plus, again, we square the numerator and the denominator. So we're going to get 2 squared is 4, 3 squared is 9. Here I am multiplying 3 times -8 over 27. Well, 27 is divisible by 3, so I'm going to simplify, cross simplify. So this is 1, and then here 27 divided by 3 is 9. So we get a -8/9. And then we are adding to that. Oh no. We're adding to that 2 times 4, which is 8 over 9. So adding those together, you end up getting 0. Everything ends up canceling. And then if we work on this right-hand side, so we get 12 times -2/3, which is going to be -24 over 3, which 24 divided by 3 is 8, and it was a negative, so negative 8 plus 8, we end up getting 0. So this is also a solution. So therefore, in this case, we also get 0 on both sides. So we have 3 solutions: x equals 2, x equals negative 2, and x equals negative 2/3. Again, I hope you find this video helpful and wish you luck as you're solving your polynomial equations.